Howdy. Welcome to Write Your Family History with Devin Noel Lee. I am Devin Noel Lee. That's a little bit obvious. I'm really grateful for all of you who join our channel. And what is it about? I strive to teach you how to quickly write your family histories using the genealogical resources you already have and expanding with extra tips and tricks that I've learned over 20 years of writing my own books, scrapbooks, writing journalism articles, and so forth. So if you are just now joining us in the chat or the comments, let me know that you are here. Like this video on your way in. Love to hear everything you guys are doing, but I want to go into today's sample. So today's sample is another newspaper article. I really like newspaper articles. Give me a second. I need to get a couple things set up. All right, today's is a newspaper article. And as I was going through this, I had a number of different steps that I went through, and I used a number of different tools. So this session might be a little bit different than previous sessions. So let me stop for a moment and say, if you haven't watched any of the writing challenges before, I may be skipping things that you're like, wait, I don't understand. Well, first, feel free to ask a question. Our longtime viewers in the comments may respond, particularly during the live stream, say, oh, you need to go to this video. This is where she talked about that step before. So I may not be as thorough as some previous challenges because there is a number of tools that I wanted to show that can help with the writing process that I don't normally do in previous sessions. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, so what are we going to cover? Well, first, we're going to cover the 4 steps that we're going to go through. Whenever you start with your document, your first step is to transcribe. I'm going to go through the steps to highlight where we're going, and then we'll get into it. So the first thing you always want to do with your document is to transcribe it, okay? Get it into a usable form that you can then manipulate. The next thing you want to do is, depending on the source, you will likely have to rearrange the details, the sentence structures. Sometimes, like in this article, it's over there. In this article, you might have to break up run-on sentences so that it's more easily to read. So before you start changing things up, take the transcription, rearrange things, paragraphize things, turn it into paragraphs, and get it ready to then analyze. There's third step, the step that I will show a lot of today, is marking up that rearranged story so that you can ask further questions, decide where you're going to add more details, mark up conflicting information. Teaser, there is some conflicting information in this story. We'll touch briefly on the conflicts and then maybe have a discussion on what would you do. And then the fourth thing, the part we're not going to actually get too much into, there's a little bit that we'll do today, but after you do the markup, that's when you go do research. That's when you make your final judgments on how to resolve conflicts. And that's when you come back and rewrite for clarity. So at the end of today's live stream, I really won't have a wonderful, beautiful article that's going to be the homework for Jenny. But I would love, if you are part of these writing challenges and I give you this feedback, share with us your final draft or your revised draft. I'll put it over on the main channel, link it to a video in the past, and let everybody know that you went in and improved your writing, and we can all praise you for what you do. So those are the 4 steps we're going to go through. So let's start with the first one. And this is one where some new features that are coming out that were talked about during Roots Tech, I want to bring to your attention. Now, Jenny sent me this via newspapers.com, okay? And what's nice is when someone has a newspapers.com account, this is what I believe happened because I don't have an active account. Notice I have to sign in. It's prompted me to try for free. So I don't have an account, but she does. So when she sent it to me, I was able to see a partial clip. And initially I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to see the full story because it cuts off at some point. Went back to the what? Went back to the what? Well, I can actually click view newspaper. And if I close that out, I can read the entire article, go back to and up to the top. Here's the rest. I can zoom out and then get the citation. We're not going to cover the citation today. I can get the citation information right up there. And I can do this all for free, even if I don't have the account. So that's a really good feature for those who do have the account. Now, have you explored the OCR on the clipping? Now, if you have a newspapers.com account, I would love to know, I don't have one active right now. I would love to know if the OCR that we see on the clipping page is available to you and where it's located. So if you're watching live or if you're watching the replay, and you can answer that for me, does the OCR appear on, like, where do you click to access the OCR in the paid account? For now, all I'm seeing is when I get to the clipping page, where it's a view clipping. I just have to go backwards. Nope. Yeah. View clipping. There we go. If I scroll down to the bottom, here's the OCR. Now, it doesn't have the entire story. Now, let me zoom in a little bit because you're going to see very quickly there are common OCR mistakes. You see that one right there? Sad. I think that's supposed to be occurrence, but it's not showing up as occurrence in the article. So yes, it says occurrence up here. And in OCR, there's some errors. You also see this error, Jose I.C. Smithson's, that looks like an error. And there are a couple other errors. So what can we do? Well, I have a pro tip for you. You can use ChatGPT to clean up a bad OCR. If you're excited about that, let me know in the comments. And now I'm going to show you what you have to do. Okay. When you have your OCR, and unfortunately, this isn't the full text, but I have a good start. Highlight that text and copy it, and then go and log into ChatGPT. Now, if you can see down here, my Grammarly is covering up. Get the citation for the page. That's kind of a pain. Let me zoom out just a smidge. I think you can see it. So what you're going to do in a prompt is say, please correct the common OCR errors in the scan text below without altering the original meaning or sentence structure of the text. Hit a period, and then I'm going to paste that newspaper OCR that I got from over here on newspapers.com. And then I'm going to click this arrow. This was arrow, not error, arrow. And then if I click this down button, notice it's going to go and fix that OCR problem. So now we have occurrence, we have Joseph K. Additionally, it is smushing all the text together without those funky breaks that happen. And then it stops because that's where the OCR stopped. It is a fantastic way to leverage the AI of optical character recognition, which I really wouldn't call AI, but it's still a technology where you don't have to sit there and type the article. That's the first thing. And second, you don't have to go and reread and make all the corrections to the common OCR errors. You can leverage ChatGPT, and notice I'm doing ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free account, and it gets it all cleaned up. So fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. So that was step one. We did the transcription. Well, actually, we didn't do the transcription. The OCR transcribed that newspaper article, and then we went into ChatGPT to clean that up. Okay. So any questions you have about OCR technology on newspapers.com or using ChatGPT, We already have a believer or a lover of ChatGPT. It is Austin. I do believe you can also use some of the other AI text tools. There's one, believe Bing can do the same thing. I haven't tried it out. If you're a Bing user, let me know. And then there are a couple others. There was a Gemini something, and then even I believe like a Microsoft one. I'm not entirely sure. Microsoft is Bing. There are a couple others that people brought to my attention, and I just haven't had enough time to try them all out. I tried out the one that many people have been asking me about. So in the future, maybe I'll try those all out. But any questions on the transcribing with the OCR phase while I grab a quick drink of water? This isn't a question, but it is a comment. AI unsettles me. Maybe we need to have a discussion about that at some point. However, I will tell you, I do like when it can do some processes that would take you a million years to, not really a million years, I'm exaggerating, take you quite a lot of man hours to solve. So this OCR cleanup, I actually like. So I think when it comes to AI, and there's so many AIs. There's AI image creation, voice manipulation, moving pictures. Sorry, I don't like moving pictures. I don't like artificial coloring of images. I've said it. But this kind of thing, it would take me hours to clean up the OCR. And so use the technology to do tasks that would otherwise take you many, many hours. And then if you want, you can stay away from the other ones. Have you tried the technique on foreign language newspapers? I have not, but if Bob, you are a regular user, if you'll send me a email to say, hey, try this on foreign newspapers, I will give that a try and then put that on my to-do list. I just don't want to forget. So once again, I am leaving right after this stream to go to swim training for my competitive swimmer in Santa Fe. So, all right, without seeing any other further questions, if you have any other questions throughout this stream, go ahead and put them in the live chat or in the comment section for if you want a more thorough answer. Okay, so now that brings us to step 2, rearrange. Okay, so with this rearrange step, I have to get a couple of things set up. Thank you for your patience. See, if I didn't do it live, then I could cut out the, hey, let me get this thing all set up for the next step. But when I don't do it live, then I have to, when I do it live, then I have to have you have a couple breaks. So feel free to drop some questions while I get it ready. Okay. So the next thing for rearrange, many of you know that I typically just go for it. I just rearrange it myself. But once again, I felt like, hey, let me try out ChatGPT, and we're going to do a comparison of the original text to the rearranged article to see just how much stuff that ChatGPT solves our problems or actually removes some of the details that actually make the story pretty good. So what we're going to do is, once again, we're going to go over to ChatGPT, and now that I have it all set up, I'm going to do another prompt. And I'm going to take myself off screen for, well, maybe I'm not. Hold on. No, I'll just be there. Oh, sorry. If I hide my video, it mutes my mic. That stinks. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So the first thing we got to do is we got to give ChatGPT a role. Who are you? What are you trying to do? Okay. So you're a historical fiction writer who uses newspaper articles to tell genealogy stories. You can play around with this role. You're someone who does this. You're an expert storyteller, you're a amateur storyteller. Give it a role and qualify that role. I also wanted to clarify what I meant. For me, I said your focus is on maintaining the meaning of the newspaper story, but revise the original into more easy to understand sentences and paragraphs. One thing I could have done, I didn't try, is to tell it, turn the newspaper articles run-on sentences into shorter, as needed story sentences to make it make more sense. But I tried this out, and then we're going to see what happens. Okay. Take the following newspaper article, make the story easy to read by, I did actually say it, breaking up run-on sentence, replacing pronouns. This is one of the videos that I talked about. It's called the newspaper naming technique. Stop overusing pronouns, I believe, is the video. I need to take a note to link that video in this description. I forgot about that in a minute, but the pronoun video. Anyway, so I'm telling ChatGPT, I don't want you to keep saying will, or will Baber, right? I don't want you to keep saying that over and over and over again. But I want you to replace the name with the pronouns he with Will Barber, William, this, that, or the other. That's what I'm trying to get it to do. Spoiler alert, it does a decent job. It doesn't do a fantastic job. And that's where you go in, revise the AI during the markup phase, and then you start taking the AI writing away from it, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. The other thing, maintain the timeline of the story. Sometimes ChatGPT will rearrange the timeline. I want to keep it. And then because it's a conversational platform, I said, let's see how it goes. You don't have to say that. So I put that in here. And then before you forget, you need to copy the OCR. So this was, I went and got the rest of the OCR. Copy the OCR, improved text, and then paste it, and then let ChatGPT to use its magic. Now, every time you run ChatGPT, it tends to revise the story. So I'm going to actually not show you what it creates right now. I'm going to show you what it created previously. Any questions so far while I'm pulling that up? Let me know. Okay, I'm going to pull this one up. That's the one we want. Okay. No questions just yet. How are we doing? If you're liking it, let me know how you're feeling about the stream so far, and the tips that you're learning. That would be great. All right. So notice it starts, the facts are as follows. On Tuesday morning, 26th of November, a party consisted of, that's kind of how it starts. But because it's a historical fiction author who likes genealogy information, or a historical fiction who uses newspapers, now it starts on the 26th of November, 1878, a tragic tale unfolded in Greenbrier County. And then it goes and talks about these companions who set off on this trail and where the location is. Notice it strives to add punctuation as appropriate. And then it also splits this massive sea of text into paragraphs, which I kind of like. I really, really do. So that's another way you can use ChatGPT to help you rearrange your original transcription into a better story flow. Okay. So the next thing to do is to mark up what ChatGPT gives you. This is when you're going to start. I'm going to recommend, especially when you do use ChatGPT to rearrange your story rather than rearranging it yourself. This is when you're going to actually compare to the original and see if ChatGPT left out something that you're like, wait, I actually kind of like that. Let's put that back into the story. And this is also when you're going to start asking the questions. For every person, you want more than just their name. You want to find biographical information because not only do you want to get that biographical information just so we get a picture of who they are, but remember with that newspaper naming technique, you don't have to keep having he, Will Barber, or Barber. Now you can say, and don't correct, I don't remember his age, but let's say he was 35. The 35-year-old man, the 35-year-old native of something, the farmer, the well-loved author. You see, now you can keep referring to William by these descriptors, and it makes it more interesting. So for the people, you want to know who are they, biographical information, and if possible, how they're related. Places, you always want to figure out where it is on a map and how things are related to each other. And then any other setting descriptions, you'll put this in. Now with historical context, you may be able to add it to this story. We'll see as we go. Now, if you're watching and you see something that I've overlooked, be sure to share that in the comment section so that Jenny can learn, but you can also work out your writing muscles and we can all become better together. Maybe there's something you see or that we've overlooked that can make the story better. So with these writing challenges, make them more interactive by taking what the sample we have and then giving some suggestions and working out your muscles. All right. So one more time, any questions thus far, drop those in. I need to pull something else up before we continue. Okay. All right. Here we go. Now it's time to mark up. Now I have marked up this document, and Jenny, you're going to get this. Actually, you're going to get the whole series. So if there's any comments that you wanted or any changes you liked previous, how am I saying this? Anything that you want to see in previous versions, it'll be there. I'm just going to send you the whole thing. All right. So the mark up and correct step. So here, the first thing I'm going to invite you to do, this first comments I had, is you need to make a style choice with dates. Do you like the European and the genealogical standard, in quotes, version of having the date, the month, and the year? Do you like to have month, date, comma, year? Do you like this fluid, fluffy, flowery way, the 26th of November, comma, 1878? At some point, especially in the markup, decide how you want dates to appear. Now, I eventually do correct this once and I forget to keep it consistent through the rest of the dates. So homework for the submitter. But whenever you see a date, you need to have a style guide. This is also going to apply to locations. Do you want to include county when you have when you have a city, county, state? Do you want to have United States on the story? If you're writing in Virginia, everything's happening in Virginia, do you have to have United States, or is it going to be USA, or is it going to be United States of America? Whenever you have a location, you have to choose your style guides. Okay. All right. Let's see. So, and then my other thing is anytime you have a day, try to figure out what day of the week. Now, I'm not going to tell you what the answers are because there is in the next version. I did actually get the day of the week. The next thing we want to do is we have this location. ChatGPT interpreted the article to mean that the event happened in Greenbrier. However, let me see. It never said that it was in Greenbrier. It says they left a camp on the south side of Cold Knob in Greenbrier County. So I'm guessing it went into Greenbrier County. This is one of those times when you need to validate. If you're going to use AI technology, this is when you need to validate the work and the assumption because it's saying it happened in Greenbrier. The next thing is, where is Greenbrier? Okay. We can go ahead and let Jenny tell us where it is. I already think I know where it is. But there's also something very, very interesting because I believe, because this is what happens in newspapers. The article she sent me, the link to the article she sent me was in a, I hope I'm saying this right, Stoughton, Virginia newspaper. And then the article mentioned, let me see if I can show it to you real quick. Yeah, it's because I'm zoomed in. It won't scroll up quickly. There we go. Let me go zoom back in. Do you see right here? It says Greenbrier Independent right there. That means it's reproduced from another article, another newspaper. So the original article appeared in the Greenbrier Independent, and it's possible that other newspapers picked up this article and published it there. So the question you're then going to have to ask is, well, there's a couple of questions. One, how close to Stoughton to Greenbrier? Is it happening in Greenbrier, West Virginia? Are there any differences between the storytelling? Which one do you think is the most accurate? Lots of great questions going on there. And then the other thing is when I noticed on the ancestry profile link that she shared with me, first we had the date of 1878 when this article is published and William actually dies. But then there's this other entry, November 1880, Northwood, Nicholas, West Virginia. And so now we already have some contradicting information. And so which one's accurate? If you happen to know which one's accurate, feel free to let me know. I'm guessing since the article was saying 1878, that's his actual birth date. And then the location is in the Greenbrier forested area, which could now be known as that Richland location. And if that's the case somewhere in the article, or even just in a footnote if we want, we need to say, oh, it's presently known as Richwood, Nicholas County, West Virginia, but at the time of the story, it was Greenbrier or something. So we already have our first conflict, contradictory information taking place. The next thing is we've got William C. And then we have a Jos K, a JASM, a THW Smithson, an EE McCure, an MD Jones. There's another Baber, a John Hanna, a Harry Hackett, a Mr. Coates, a Rutledge, and then two people whose names have happened again. So one of the things that I wanted to do is, because I thought there might be some repeat names, is I color coded the names. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me know if you can. If you can see the colors, type colors in the chat for the live viewers. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to color code the names to see if any of them repeated. The one that did repeat for sure was Thomas A. Baber. He repeated, and I think this THW Smithson repeated from the first trip of companions, and then he came back and did a search party. Now, Jenny tells us that Thomas A. Baber was his son and Jenny's second great grandfather. Okay, so I'm glad you're telling us. We can see that that's colored, but you can't see it very well. I understand that. Oh, and for anybody wondering how I'm getting all these comments, this is in Google Docs, and rumor has it you can do this commenting feature in Microsoft Words, but I don't know if you can do it in Apple. So all right. So I highlighted everybody just a different color. You can either do the highlight, you can change the text color somehow so you can see if anything repeats, and that kind of helps you out. And then we go to the next part, which is what are their full names? Why are they traveling together? Are they migrants from the same village? Are they teamsters? Are they folks out for sports? Why are they traveling? Because whenever I see like they go out into a forest area, forgive me for living in the Mountain West, but I always think of pioneers. But there's other reasons why people go adventuring. So if possible, it would be nice to figure that out. Now, let me stop sharing that and see if I can share. Oh, okay. I had a lot of questions for Jenny. We're just going to focus on this part that I worked on right here. Yeah. Okay. So first, I found out that the he was Joseph K. Smithson of Wolf Creek in Monroe County, West Virginia, and he was 51. There was a T.H.W. Smithson, same location, 26, and he was the brother. Or not the brother, the son of Joseph. JAS was actually James M. Kraft of Williamsburg. He's 52. And unfortunately, I'm not entirely sure who these other two men were based on trying to search for people of this name living in or near Greenbrier, West Virginia, between 1780 and 1880. That's kind of the search terms I used to try to figure out who these men would be. Thomas, again, is the son. There was a John Hannah and a Harry Hockett. They're both from Williamsburg. One's 55, one's 19. Haven't figured out who H.P. Coates is. And then there was a Mr. Rutledge. So these gentlemen seem to be from Williamsburg. And what I found interesting, if I go back to the ancestry page, yeah, the ancestry page, I found a neat little bit of information about the wife. Now, typically when you're marking things up, you don't jump and do the research, but I'm kind of folding these two together. In 1870, she lived in Monroe. And notice there were two men from Monroe, West Virginia. And then in 1880, she lives in Williamsburg, Greenbrier, West Virginia. And a number of men were from there. And so at that point, we start to think, oh, okay, there's some friends from when okay, we don't know yet. I'm jumping ahead. Whenever you start figuring out these people, you start going, okay, well, then when was William in Monroe and when was William in Greenbrier? He likely died in 1878 because the 1880 census, it said she was a widow. So he must have died before 1880. And, there seems to be, why is he knowing people from Williamsburg and then also from Monroe? Why are they traveling? Lots and lots and lots of questions. I'm going to stop for a moment. There are a couple of things that came in. Bob says, from working in the newspaper business for a short time, there was a very good chance that the reprint was edited to fit into allotted space. Absolutely. Gold star for Bob Bell. Yes, that is very true. You always want to try to figure out which one was the original print, because these were reprinted in other papers. They didn't always have the same column space and column inches available to reprint, but this falls, if you saw my newspaper research video over on Write Your Family History channel, this falls into unique or sensational, right? Some guy's going to die in the woods. So it's an interesting life story. So they'll give some column inches to it. It's also not that far from Stoughton, Virginia. So sure, that's going to be great. I mean, if it happened in Utah, it has to be really extreme. But if it's nearby, regionally nearby, you can give a few more inches. So very true. Go back to the original, see if there's any changes between the edition. And then she did confirm it is Greenbrier, West Virginia. Thank you so much. We saw that one. Okay, so we're going to come to this. I'm going to hold it, but I'm letting you know there are some contradictions. And then P. Smith asks, should ChatGPT be correlated with telling the story? If all you do is feed ChatGPT your initial text, spit it out, and then put it into a book, then yes, you need to credit ChatGPT with assisting with the writing of the story. But you're going to soon find out that after we start marking this up, we're not necessarily going to be really having that original from ChatGPT. We just used it to reconfigure things. And so do you cite that you used Grammarly to fix your verbs and your commas and so forth? If you want to, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So I'm going to leave that up to you. Should you, if you feel like you want to include, hey, I used ChatGPT to help me write the story, then go ahead and put that in a preface of your book when you finally publish the story of someone's life. But since I don't say, hey, I use Grammarly to edit the text, right now, the way I recommend you use it, you won't need to cite it, but the choice always remains with you. I hope that answers your question. Okie dokie. All right. How are we doing? If you're liking it so far, let me know. I love getting feedback. Let's go back to some more things. All right. So they embarked from their camp. Okay, what camp? Why are they camping? Again, there's a contradictory article that says they're leaving, I guess, from their home. I'm not entirely sure, but if we're just focusing on that, why are they camping? Where are they headed? What is their purpose? And then we have the south side of Cold Knob. Now, you notice how it is bolded and italicized. So ChatGPT decided to leave that out, that initial starting location. And I don't know about you, but don't leave out locations because I need to be able to put that on a map. And so that's why I said ChatGPT took that out, add it back in, and then go back and revise it because I didn't really worry about the sentence structure. So you're going to see a number of these little prompts, particularly with the bullets in italicized. Oh, it's too small. The bold and italicized comments. And that's where I went and re-put back in information that ChatGPT took out. Here's another location, about 12 miles. One of the things that I didn't feel like this article has is, what is the terrain like? Many articles, especially newspaper articles, don't give you that detail because they assume you already know what the terrain is like because you live nearby. But for us, many years later, and me living in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, I would highly recommend talking about what kind of vegetation is there. What is the elevation like? Is it terrain? Is it flat? Is it rolling hills? Is it moist? Is it dry? Go and research those details so you can put it into the story and make it sound so much better. Okay. Now, here's the point when I read an article, and this isn't a person or place, but it says, okay, let's back up a little bit. Midway during this journey, William Bardis, Barber noticed, excuse me, Baber. William Baber noticed bear tracks from the night before. A bear had crossed the road the previous night, making its way in the direction of the South Fork of Cherry River. Intrigued, now this is all original from that article, but ChatGPT moved it around. Intrigued, Baber, who was leading their wagon, decided to chase the bear with 2 dogs, leaving his friends to continue on. Okay, yeah, he decided. He decided to chase a bear. And I'm sitting there going, why did you decide to chase a bear? Like, I have bears in Los Alamos. I ain't chasing a bear. There's no way I'm chasing a bear unless bears are a threat and I have a gun and I'm going to shoot it. Although I'm not that good a shot. So hopefully my husband's along and he can shoot the bear, because really, I'm not going near the bear. So when I see something, oh, he decided to chase the bear. What am I going to do here? And then Bob says, yeah, let's bring that back up. He went out with where decided to chase the bear. And he takes 2 dogs, right? 2 dogs without weapons or supplies. Now, ChatGPT used the word supplies. I like the word provision. I think it's more historically accurate to the language that was used at the time. But why? Why did he want to go chase a bear with 2 dogs and no provisions? Like, I want to know why. And so that's why I marked that up. Like, why? Why would he do that? And why would the group of men let him go? Yeah. Now, you can make a supposition that he wanted a new rug. So funny. I love it. You could say that he's like fascinated by bears. He could, I don't know. That is something you can speculate a little bit if it makes more sense. I wouldn't use this one. Sorry, let your reader have that thought, but you can put in some speculations, trying to figure out if this bear is going to be a problem, scoping it out. Or there's the tracks. Let's see how close this bear is to know how fast we need to move away, other things like that. But you can put that speculation in. Other things about the individuals. Let's see. Again, when you have so many different people, try to figure out how they're connected. Here's another question to ask. So in this paragraph, it talks about how the search party, which includes William's son, Thomas, they, at nightfall, so the party started on this trek on the 26th, and William went chasing after the bear on the 26th. The 27th is a day of searching. The 28th is a day of searching. Thomas comes back to camp. This is when you can make your story more interesting, and you are allowed to make judgments. How would you feel if your father has been missing for 2 days and we haven't highlighted it in the discussion, but in the article, it's snow-covered mountain, difficult terrain, there's a bear, and there's thick brush and thistle bushes and laurel stuff. How do you think he felt when he came back to camp? If you want to contribute to how you think Thomas would have felt, share those with us. I would love to see. Maybe you have different thoughts than I have, but definitely ask that question and maybe consider writing it. So he is found on the 29th. So this is the 6th is when they started out. So 26, 27, 28, 29. The 4th day of leaving for this little venture, he is found, and he climbed up to this bluff. His dog is staying there. The other dog ran back to the settlement, but there's a search party that went and found William, and then the dog had gone back to the settlement. So my question for this article is, did they know the dog went back from to the settlement? Is this something like they would have known, or is this something people found out later? That his dog, his loyal dog, stayed by his side until the search party arrived, and the other dog went back. So, I mean, that's a beautiful little story there. And yeah, I would just ask, did they happen to know? Is that how they knew what path to follow? Follow the trail of this dog that made its way back, and then they meandered through the location. Where is the location of the family home? That's not made clear. It just said 2.5 miles by litter, and the final distance back to the family by wagon. And then we also have a blue sulfur. Where is that located? And so on and so forth, right? So at this point, I hope that you get a rough idea of how do you start marking up the story, asking questions based on what it was going. Okay, there is a comment from Stacy. I'm going to leave that up to the chat to try to help her out, and then give me feedback as to how I can help her, because I'm not entirely sure how I can help you at this moment with your comment. But all right, so we've got locations. We've got a lot of different people. We've got this story of this man going after a bear with no weapons or provision, and then we have him dying 4 days later. So that was for revision 1. I'm going to highlight a couple of things. Additional is, so we have 2 different sources. We have the Greenbrier article and we have the Stoughton. Now, I'm not entirely sure if we need to include information about Stoughton in his story. I really feel like we need to learn more about Greenbrier in order to tell this story. I got a little bit of detail about the Greenbrier newspaper, not necessarily finding the original article, but learning about the actual newspaper, because this one happens to the Library of Congress has, in the United States at least, it has history about all of the newspapers that they have been made aware of. And so there might be some nuggets that can help you write your story, tell you a little bit about Greenbrier. I know in Stoughton there was this really great little detail, but I don't know if it's going to be needed in this story. But this is just kind of an example of what you can find on that history page. Said located in Augusta County, geographical center of Virginia, prior to West Virginia becoming a state. So that's kind of interesting. But I like this. Known as the Queen City of the Shenandoah Valley. If you didn't know that before, now when you mention the location, you can put that in and give your story a little more clarity, a little more cool features. Let's see. So now I'm going to take you to the next stage. Map it out. Okay, so we're trying to mark up and make sense of what's happening. Unfortunately, there's so many location descriptors that when you put it into a map, it's not entirely helpful. So here I went into just regular Google Map, and I found Cold Knob, and I found Cherry River, and it's about a 15-mile distance if you take this route. But the newspaper article said about a 12-mile difference. So either we have a conflict, or just a mistake, or an assumption error, or maybe there's a different route in the past that it was 12 miles, where in present it's 15. Not entirely sure, but that's the first thing I tried to do. The next thing I did was I took this route to kind of understand the terrain. So I looked at the satellite view, and you can see that there is elevation differences, there's vegetation, and so forth. So when you're trying to look for details about the setting, you could leverage modern day maps to give you a sense of what it might have been like in the past. The next thing I tried to do was use something called Google MyMaps. Now, I cannot promise you I got this right, but I am going to share this link with Jenny so that she can go and play around with it as well. And I've started it out. started it out with my best guesses, especially since these are rivers and creeks and so forth. All right, so the first one I put on the map here was they were supposed to start at the south side of Cold Knob. So if we zoom in, this little location is Cold Knob, and there's a modern day, it's got this little road so you can go to this overlook. Is that the right place? I'm not sure, but that's the best place I can find for a south side of Cold Knob on this map. Now, something else that we can do in this MyMap is we could actually switch it to the terrain view. There's this is like mountainous, like elevation view. There's a lot of really cool views, but I'm just going to stay on this one because it shows you the names of modern day roads. But as we get in, here's the Cold Knob Mountains, south side. That's kind of what I came up with. But we can also see rivers and streams. So we have a Spring Creek, we have an Upper Creek, and that gives you kind of an idea of what's going on. All right. So in the story, it said that near Blue Hill, at the base of Blue Hill, there were these bear tracks that caught the attention of William, and he went off on his little quest. Okay, so I can put a pin in, and then you can actually customize the pin and do like a Google image search, and I did for bear tracks, and you can add something. And that way, whenever you click on the pin, it becomes a little more interesting. So I put that pin there, and there in this story, it said about midday or midway on this 12-mile journey that they saw this track. Now, in Google My Maps, there is a way to use a distance calculator, but it's as the crow flies. So you put it on one pin, you go to the next, and it's very small and hard to see, but it's about 2.75 miles away. Now, if you had to go all of these circuitous routes here, let me get my pen out. If we had to go this way, well, then maybe it could be 6 miles, and it could be 6 miles because there's an elevation change. I'm not entirely sure, but maybe I don't have either the first original starting point or the second point of where this happened. So I'm doing the very best I can to try to figure this out. Whenever you're using these tools, you always want to go back to this little hand to move things around. Otherwise, it gets problematic. Okay, so then I'm trying to zoom in. There is this Cold Run. I have not figured out where Cold Run is because when I look at the map and it shows a water feature called Cold Run, it's all the way up there. Would these people have traveled all the way up there to find him all the way down here? I'm thinking this is a false location or a false name. Now, the article said the bear was heading to the South Fork of the Cherry River. And I'm guessing from if you start at the Cold Knob, there's this river called the Cold Knob, and it would have taken them along this route. So that's probably where they're going. It's in the basic direction of where they're going. And so they said in the article, he died somewhere near the end of where the Cold Run ran into the South Fork Creek. And so currently I have this death location right here, this little skull and crossbones. Now, you can always, if you click on it, you can move it wherever you need to, wherever you think it can be. So that's what's nice about this map. It's not permanent. Other things that I put on this map was I don't know where Holiday Place is, but the Cherry River is over here. Now this is the South Fork of the Cherry River. Maybe that's where they were actually headed. I just picked a place, and that's actually where I started with, and I might need to move it somewhere else. But there isn't a really good gravestone icon. There is a cemetery one that's a Japanese icon, so that's the one I picked to mark that he is buried here in this Baber Cemetery. And what's actually interesting is the map does say Baber Cemetery. And then there's also a Baber Mountain Retreat. That's kind of interesting. I don't know if we're going to include this in the story or not, but the other things I put on this map is where Williamsburg is, because this is where his wife lives in 1880. Not only that, that is where a number of the search party people were from. So they're down here, and notice the distance that these Williamsburg folks are going to search for William, the lost William who decided to go search for a bear without a gun. Crazy guy. And then the other one, blue sulfur. Where is blue sulfur? Okay, they mention a blue sulfur, but I think I have it in the wrong county. Because when I looked on a map, it said blue sulfur was part of Greenbrier, and this is actually in a different location. But you get the idea. You can start listing out the different locations and trying to map it all out. It has a snippet tool. For what purpose? Remind me what purpose, the snippet tool. Oh, I need to figure out how to take screenshots of maps. Oh, that's easy. Now, it's easy if you have oh, I see what you're saying. Paul, you were answering Stacy. So yes, there is a tool. I'll have to make a video about that. Stacy, send me an email. Anytime you guys have video ideas, just email me. Stacy, send me an email about the snippet tool, and I'll remember to do that. So that I would, anytime you have an opportunity to map things out, use the Google My Maps. See if you can figure it out. When you have addresses, even historical addresses, you can go to an old map and then figure it out now. Those are easier to figure out. But do the best you can, and because this is going to help you understand the story. So I hope you liked that demonstration. It is really neat. Really like it. Hello for anybody else who is joining us. This video will be available for replay as soon as it's done, so you can always go back to the beginning. All right. So where are we? Okay, so I was trying to map things out. I'm coming back to the story. And as you're going to see, I started rearranging the names of people as I figured them out. Okay. And then you're going to see, this is a problem, Cold Knob. Are they really starting out at Cold Knob? Because there was a second source that I was sent. Okay. Jenny doesn't know exactly where it was printed, but there's this story that tells us, okay, this is the Upine Mountains. And it was written when his grandchildren are being buried and living in different locations. So it is not contemporary to that original article in the newspaper. It's not to say this one is wrong, and it's not to say the first one is wrong. Is to point out that there are some differences. So this was nice because now we can actually use the phrase "you mountains" and put it into the story. It does mention Nicholas County, and yet the story was talking about Greenbrier. So we're a little bit confused there. But let's go back and close a few more of these things out just to get my computer some more resources. Okay. So I decided to get the date Tuesday. So it's a Tuesday. They embarked from their camp on the south side. Again, the camp is going to be problematic because in this story, it said, where is it? Where is it? Okay. In this second article, it didn't say that they were camping. It said that they left from somewhere in Ridgetown and then went to this town called Reconveret. But there's a problem with that. When I put it into a search, that's a misspelling. So But the purpose of this journey was to buy food and other supplies. And he took two young men who lived near them and wanted to get out of the wilderness long enough to see a big town. Now, he took his shepherd dog. I forgot to pay attention to that. So we'll definitely want to, whenever we mention the dog, bring that back in. They spent the day getting the supplies, loading them into wagon, and early the next morning, they started back to the U Pines Mountains. Okay. And thank you for that clarification. So this article was written 63 years after the event took place. Okay. So whenever something is written after the facts, there are some details you can pull from the story because they're likely true, like the shepherd dog. We're hoping it's a shepherd dog, not a Rottweiler or a poodle. Um, Usually people don't get, I mean, or a Pekingese, you know what I mean? Usually people get close on some of those details, but the dates and timelines can be a little off. The biggest problem I have is that two men supposedly went with him, and yet the article had, what was it, 4 or 5 men? Wrong one. So it was William, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 men are embarking on this journey. They are headed to, they're starting at the Cold Knob, and they're going to the holiday place on Cherry River. And this other article, 63 years later, has said that they're going to get supplies because they live in the mountain. So, thoughts? What do you think? Sorry. I can't imagine a poodle in the snowy mountains, okay? But if I'm wrong, you guys let me know how many poodles go in the snowy mountains. But in any case, how do you resolve such a disparaging, not disparaging, set a drastic difference between the intent of the purpose? Because you remember, I'm trying to say that they're why are they going on this venture in the snow? This article 63 years later changes how many people go on this trip. They don't name the people who went on this trip. So was that information lost, or was the original article wrong, or did somebody think it was irrelevant? You've got these questions, and because we now have a different location, we have to put on the map. Does it seem like it would make sense? There's a lot of conflict. All right. Okay. Now this is just highlighting that I'm starting to revise, like, how do I want things to happen? So the original information was somewhere else. So I decided to go ahead and just make a new sentence. I added that it was a northerly direction, and then I added the elevation. Here is, in doing research about Cold Knob, I mean, this is beautiful country, like gorgeous. Even today it's gorgeous. So that we could use some of this information to help us writing the story. So far, they're headed in a northerly direction and what the elevation is like. Now, this is when I actually took some information from that previous article. It's down here, sorry. That second article, the one 63 years later, because this is when it says, while living near the present town, not far from Greenbrier, he went in a 2-horse wagon to this location to buy food to young men with him. We've got this reason for the journey explained, but somehow, how do you make it align? Now, this could be one time where you stick with what the original article said, and then you turn this information into what I like to call box text. Okay. I actually can't see that very well. Hold on. Format. In Google Docs, you format paragraph borders, and then let's get a different. It's not doing what I want it to do for some reason. Okay, I don't have time to try to figure that out. But the idea is to set this to aside. It says 63 years later, this is what the family story said of why he took the trip. And that could actually help you not necessarily resolve the conflict, but show that there's two stories about what's happening and you're including both and letting your reader decide. Okay. Now I do like this part, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to put this in. Heavy snow had fallen, making all travel difficult and obscuring the road, so it was hard to follow. But snow or snow. So I like this part that they're going on this because that adds setting, it adds context, right? Um, but again, this second part, they were just desperate for food. That could be why, but we're not sure how to get it in there. Now, you said there was a bear. The next question I'm going to ask is what kind of bear? Now, thankfully, there's just basically one kind of bear that shows up in the Western Virginia area, and that's the black bear. And so at this point, I would highly recommend giving some description about the bear. And not only that, this bear is being spotted in late November. The hibernation season begins in October, and they should not have a lot of bears out in late December. And so I went ahead and since black bears typically hibernate in late fall, sighting the bear in late November could mean it hadn't eaten enough to sleep until spring. And I have a reference source down below, and I can fix the citation later. Now, I don't know what size the bear was. I don't know what gender the bear was. I don't know anything about the bear. So this would be a perfect time to use the sidebar or box text to give a little detail about the black bear. So that's why I went ahead and did this. Now, from that first article, there was a paragraph that said, living in the mountains as he did, Mr. Baber never wanted to let a bear live. If he could get a chance to kill it. For bears were enemies of mankind, so Mr. Barber started in pursuit of this one, following its tracks in the snow. Now, can you use that? Right? We're trying to combine these two sources. What was his motivation? He wants to kill a bear. My problem is he went without weapons and provisions. So how is he going to kill the bear with a dog? And how do we know he had those opinions? Because this is written 63 years after his death. Was there a journal? Is there any other corroborating detail? You guys tell me what you think. Would you include this information about why he went on a hunt for the bear? Because nowhere in this second article did it say that he went without gun or provision. So we now have some conflicts. Okay. Now I decided to also start adding the newspaper naming technique. The recent migrant from this county, which I don't know how to say, and I'm not going to try, and also from Blue Sulphur, because that was in the original article. The second article, the 63 years later, that said this location. So right now, I'm putting them both in, and then you can decide how you want to do it. But notice I'm not calling him William. I'm not calling him Baber. I'm calling him the recent migrant. Because recently he moved to this U Pines mountain area, right? And so instead of always using your person's name, use something that describes him. I also added a little bit of setting. And then I pulled some information from that second one because they are describing a home. The reason why I think the home description is a little more valid and reliable is because they have relatives who were still living in it. And he is buried in the Baber Cemetery near that homestead. And in 1904, the next person to be buried in this location is buried there, his granddaughter. So I have a feeling they know what the home looked like. It's been enough time. It's been in the family long enough that somebody knows what it looks like. So yeah, we can go ahead and pull that details out to describe that where he lived. Okay. Couple other things I wanted to bring to your attention. This was interesting. Let me change the color, and then I'll change it back, maybe, or not. Um, let's do really dark. He was a Civil War vet. And his traveling companions, now I'm starting to add the details about the traveling companion. Joseph, who's 51, and his son Thomas, they're from this location. And they were likely friends from the days after the Civil War ended, when William had lived in Monroe County. At the time, William had helped to build the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad before his move to the Yupine Forest. All of this comes from that second source. Now, just because some things seem to have discrepancy doesn't mean the entire article is wrong. I have a feeling that this information, based on some of the other sources that Jenny had, is accurate. And so by putting some of this details in there, how did he know this Joseph and Thomas, who don't live in the mountains where he lived, or in Williamsburg, where his wife moves to? Oh, Monroe, he's working in the rail. It's entirely possible that they work there too. It would be another place to do a little more research. But since we're using the words likely knew him when he lived there, that can help you establish a little bit of the relationship. There are a lot more things that I could go over. I wanted to show some other ways that I called him the missing man's tracks. He was a highly respected man. That was at the end of that article. He was highly respected and whatnot. Instead of just having the conclusion be highly respected, how about I use this description up here? Now, I proved that highly respected because in the second article, it talks about what he did. He was a cattle dealer in a good judge of stock, and he thought that this place where he moved to was going to be good grazing land. And so now I'm showing you why he's respected, highly respected, because of that second article. The other thing, okay, remember I said, why don't you put in some details about what Thomas might have been thinking? Now, I haven't gone too in depth. That you guys can use, watch later and share your thoughts. What could he have been thinking? But I'm doing two things. What could he have been thinking? And then what was the family structure of William? Okay. So here, I'm going to make it a little bit darker so you guys can read it. Unfortunately, Thomas and his companion, I'm about to go see my son's coach, and his name is Tomas. So if I keep calling Thomas, that's why. It's all good. Unfortunately, Thomas and his companions had to turn back as night fell before locating William. So that's just me revising the sentence that was there, making it having more human nature element. Thomas wondered, I'm making a judgment. You can make judgments. If you saw my story from Carol Baxter about making judgments, this is a judgment you can make, right? The judgment of, he's wondering how he'll tell his 48-year-old mother and his 10 siblings, ranging from 30 to 9, that he couldn't find his father. Do you think that's a fair judgment? Absolutely. You know, that is definitely on the mind. When you have bad news to bear, you would be wondering, how am I going to reveal that to you? Maybe there's a better way to say that, but there you go. Now, they did mention, remember earlier I said he was a Civil War veteran. I have this story where a little detail that I added. I'm not sure if I like it, but that's also part of the revise again stage. You draft and you draft and you draft and you draft, or you draft and revise and revise and revise and revise until you finally like the story. It makes enough sense. You've answered your questions, you've added setting and so forth. But anytime you have a thought, throw it in, even if you're like, I don't think it fits there. But that's when I went ahead and put, the former private in the Confederate Army, gave the regiment, had survived the Civil War, but lost his life in the wilderness on a winter day. Not bad. It's a start. Now, One of the problems I have between the second article and this one is the follow-up article said 8 days after he started on his bear hunt, his dead body was found. But in this article, which was more contemporary to the event happening, it started on the 26th and his body was found on the 30th. So 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, that's 5 days. So it's not 8 days. Maybe 8 days until he was buried, perhaps. Not entirely sure. But there are some conflicts. And so there were a couple of comments here. One, there's so many discrepancies between the two articles. True. And so as the writer, what do? Well, you have to make the best judgment that you can. So here are some suggestions. Anna Karin from Sweden said, I would try to find an article near the event. Maybe there's a follow-up article. Maybe there's an obituary. Because this is just a death story. Maybe there's an obituary, something else. Maybe there's articles before talking about being a cattle dealer, give you some sense of what's going on. Stacy said, I'd be more likely to trust the information in the earlier article, especially that far after the fact. Something written 2 years after, maybe not as much to discount. So very, very, very true. Other fun comments, you guys are fun to read about. Okay, so now this is a theory that our submitter has. Details of this searchers trying to follow his tracks, yet they show coming out of the water. It has crossed my mind that he purposely left his travel companions, waded through the icy water, and sat under the tree to die. But then the question becomes why? Why would he have done that? Because he has, like I said, 11 kids. Well, I said indirectly, he has his son Thomas, and then Thomas has 10 siblings ranging from 30 to 9. And then he also has a wife. Why would he have left his companions to go off to die? Now, it's possible that he had some news that he didn't want to share with his wife. It's possible he was drunk. It's possible, who knows, right? If you can't answer why, right, it's best to write in such a way that your reader can make that decision for themselves and fill in the blanks yourself. Your job is to give as much detail as you can, striving for accuracy as best you can, but recognize, one second, recognize particularly with a death, especially can I call it strange? It's kind of strange, a strange death. And the reason why I'm using strange is my German immigrant ancestor Joseph that I wrote about. His death story is a little bit strange. And what I've noticed in some of these strange death stories is families often don't want to tell all of the details, or they strive to fill in the gaps for the questions they don't have answers to. So let's give you an example of Joseph. So my Joseph, if you've been around the channel enough, you've heard this story. So he was outside the Columbus barracks in July 1863. The date is shortly after Gettysburg had happened and the news had reached Columbus, Ohio. So the people at the Columbus barracks were on high alert. He's a German immigrant, had only been there for about 10 years. Recently had become a naturalized citizen. He's married and he has 3 living kids. One child had died in his relative infancy. He was 18 months old and he drowned in a well that Joseph had just dug on his property. Okay, so he's outside the Columbus barracks and he was approaching them in the middle of the night for some reason. The officers yelled halt. He didn't understand the word halt and they shot him. There's 2 big problems with that story. Number 1, Germans know what the word halt mean. Every German I've talked to, people who were born and raised or served missions or worked or did study abroad, they all know Germans know what the word halt means. So that doesn't work. Second, Columbus Barracks did not exist in 1863. It came out later. There were a couple other locations that it could possibly have been. Maybe the family just got the name of the location wrong because the person who wrote down this story was his granddaughter or possibly even his great granddaughter. I don't have the tree up on the top of my brain, but I know it was at minimum the granddaughter, if not the great granddaughter. And his older child was 4. So this is a long time after his death when the story is written down. Now, there's a theory that he was, because of the funeral happened the same day of a man who appears in the newspaper involved in a riot of some kind, a little altercation, and he gets shot. But there's 3 other men. They don't know what happened, but they got injured in this little exchange of fire and knives and stuff. It's possible because he died, he was buried on the exact same day and they're both German. It's possible he's connected with that. But the family didn't want people to know about that, so they invented the story of him being shot outside the Columbus Barracks. Because there's so much alcoholism in the Geisler line until my dad quit in the late 1970s, perhaps he was drunk, and this was a better story to tell. So there are reasons that families have these stories and they're inaccurate because they'd rather not tell you the truth. It's also possible people misremembered, but we all have to come to a point where when we just take the facts that we have and we do the best we can to write the story. A couple other comments coming in while I was on my little rant. Okay, now Stacy had this one idea. This is a possibility. Maybe it was a small bear, like a yearling of sorts, where a dog could take it down, may have gone to get the meat from the bear, especially if they were low on food. So that is a way to tie it to that second article. I like it. I like it. So how would you incorporate the possibility into the story, or would you? Let's have a little discussion about that. Let's see. Oh, here's a good little comment. What we're talking about has been very helpful for Robin. Glad to hear it. If you find it helpful, I love to get your feedback. So be sure to leave lots of comments. He was rumored to be scalped, for sure murdered, in the woods of Iowa. There was an ongoing series article about it and a later arrest. And so your job, if you have these multiple articles, start with the first one. Recognize, there's a couple of things to recognize about newspaper articles. First one, hot off the press, is a phrase. People tried to get the news out fast. So sometimes the first report is not complete or has inaccuracies. So you definitely want to look at the second, see where they overlap, see if there's any corrections, or see if it's just an expansion of that original story. And then when you have the multiple subsequent article and arrest, and if there's a court case, your job is to try to think like a detective and use a little bit of logic, because people lie. Let's face it, people lie. They all have biases, they all have motives, and your job is just to kind of parse the information out and write in such a way that you outline the details the best that you can, and then let your reader decide what the truth is. Now, there may be a way to actually get the truth. There's DNA evidence on a victim, so the killer was this person for sure. That could be truth, or there's DNA evidence that this person sired a child. Therefore this story is more accurate. But absent that kind of proof, you do your best to put the information together. Somebody could read your information and come up with a different conclusion than you, and that's okay. But when you have the multiple articles, putting them together, which one do you believe? The answer is it depends. It depends on what part of the article you're adding into, because the fact of him being a Confederate Army vet, I'm pretty sure in the 63 years later, that one was accurate. Other reasons, perhaps he had injuries or PTSD, considering he was a Civil War vet. This is about, let's see, Civil War ended roughly 1865, and the article is taking place 1878. It's possible. I'm not going to rule it out. It is entirely possible that he was injured and it was still acting up. Okay, so now we have a not related but related writing question. I'm wondering how to write about a woman who married one of my step relatives. She killed her newborn son after serving time in prison. She immigrated to the USA and married there. I guess the question is, what part of the story are you wondering about? If you are wondering about how to write about the death of the newborn, is the one I'm guessing you're concerned about. Remember my video about writing ethically? You tried to be objective, neutral, and fair. Okay. So some of the people had suggested that as a Civil War vet, he could have old injuries. He could have had PTSD. If you can find some reasons of what might have caused her to kill her newborn child, then please include those. Not that you're trying to explain it, but you're trying to what could be the reason behind this happening. Now, what if she killed her newborn child and it was because she slept in the same bed and she rolled over it and crushed the baby? Now, that is a situation that has happened throughout the years, which is why there's more advocates. Don't necessarily sleep with your baby in the same bed. And this just gives more evidence to that. So your job about writing is to be as factual as possible, be fair by showing there could be some explanations to why this happened. This could be the path that led her on to doing something like that. And just don't say she's a vicious murderer, because then you're passing judgment on her. If the murder or the killing of this child was vicious, then you say the act was vicious. It was a vicious murder of the child. Does that make sense? So your job is to be neutral, be fair, and give a little bit of grace. So if she has mental health problems and she harmed her child in this way, by letting your reader know that she had mental health issues, it doesn't make it less tragic, but it does make it, two things. Wow. Yeah, I can understand how that may have happened. Let's also work on improving the mental health of our family. You see, because that's to me, whenever we share these sensitive stories, alcoholism in my family, abuse in my family, I need to stay away from alcohol and I need to work on what are the problems that would drive my family to harm each other in that way. Is it just alcohol, or is it bad training? Is it anger management? Yada, 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 yada. And that's why we share some of these stories, so that we can learn from the past and make changes in the future. So that's what I would do. Postpartum depression could definitely be part of that story too. And if you want to include the possibility of that, I would definitely give her grace in that way. All right. Well, it is 11:30 my time. It's been over an hour and a half. I really hope you guys love these sessions. And be sure to leave comments, leave questions, leave suggestions for both the person who submitted as well as me on how to make these videos better, how to make our writing better, and so forth. I am going to strive to get the communication improved, such as the email and updating the main website, so that we can stay in better communication. It's really hard to restart a channel after having taken such a break, but I appreciate all the love and support. Love and support right back at you. Keep the questions coming, keep watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys. Maybe. There we go.